Hey, it's Irreverent Aegis here, and welcome to another installment of the two-man vet dungeon tanking series, where my heterosexual life partner Kyle and I... Wait a minute, that's not Kyle. And this is actually a build video. So let's start over. Hey, it's Irreverent Aegis here, and in this video, some non-Kyle guy named Phyozo and I are two-manning hard mode Oathsworn pit, so I can test out tank subclassing and get tons of views because everybody loves a good build video. Honestly, subclassing is like a wet dream for content creators. Anyway, I'll be walking you through how to build Aegis Daedric Shadowlord. If Aegis Daedric Shadowlord were a Magic the Gathering card, it would be a black and chartreuse commander with Indestructible that would give all other creatures you control trample. It would also have the ability, pay 3 mana, return target creature to the battlefield from your graveyard. Then, you win the game. If there's one thing ESO and Magic have in common, it is insane power creep. We are going to use the skill lines Shadow from the Nightblade, Daedric Summoning from the Sorcerer, and Gravelord from the Necromancer, hence the name Aegis Daedric Shadowlord. And as usual, my builds are battle tested, so you know they are going to work in content, even when I don't have a full 5-piece gear set for the entire Oathsworn Pit hard mode run, which totally didn't happen, of course. I'll show the entire build at the end of the video, but before we get there, I want to highlight some key aspects of the build in real game time so you can see how this thing plays. One primary feature of the build is its durability, especially when getting a res. If you combine the Nightblade abilities Mirage, which gives major evasion, and Dark Cloak, which gives an incredible hot, especially when you aren't moving, with the broken Sorcerer skill Bound Aegis, you almost have an unkillable tank. One problem with a pure Sorc tank is that your tank level heals and heals over time aren't very strong compared to some other classes. So without a healer, you are very susceptible to damage over time that can't be blocked. But now that you can subclass, you can take Dark Cloak from the Nightblade and have an insanely powerful hot to combine Bound Aegis with. Major evasion, of course, is just icing on the cake. When you aren't going for a trifecta or no death, there's a skill combo that really shines here. As the tank, you should actually be the one getting every single res, at least in 4-man content. What you do is you hit Dark Cloak, then you activate Bound Aegis, and then you use the Shield Discipline ultimate from the Sword and Shield skill line. You will automatically be blocking when you activate that, which means you'll have the full mitigation from Bound Aegis, and you'll have that extra strong hot. And as long as you have the Red CP Spirit Mastery turned on, you can get that res with full health under almost every circumstance. You can actually see it in action right here. I'm going to hit Dark Cloak, then Bound Aegis, then I'm going to activate the ultimate. Watch me take this heavy attack, get hit with that red line, and get hit with that dot, and take almost no damage at all while pulling off that res. It's an incredible combination. You can get up now, Phyozo. Anytime, we're all waiting for you. Moving on, let's say you're running the Olorima set because you are playing without a healer. All Olorima users know that most of your DPS just don't pick up the buff from the giant glowing circle on the ground. One benefit of running Gravelord is that you can place Olorima wherever you want with the ground-based skill Unnerving Boneyard. It's already a nice tank option since it applies AoE Major Breach and AoE Minor Vuln, all while providing a synergy. It's even better when you run it with Olorima because you can drop the Major Courage buff directly on somebody's head. That's especially important because people like Phyozo never pick up your buff. One possible drawback of this build is you don't have access to the Ultimate Generation skill Necrotic Potency, which is on a different Necromancer skill line, or to the Nightblade passive that gives you Ultimate with every potion. However, you do have a decreased cost of Ultimate due to one of the Daedric Summoning passives. That actually reduces the cost of your Colossus Ultimate down to 149, so you'll still have plenty of uptime on Major Vulnerability. If you combine that with the Scribe skill Trample, you can also give yourself Major Heroism on demand. Let's talk gear. Gear, of course, is highly dependent on the group you're rolling with and the content you're doing, so there is a lot of flexibility. In this two-man hard mode, I went with Lucent Echoes and Olarima for my 5-piece sets. The Master's Sword and Shield for a cheap burst heal and to keep my resistances capped off, and Magma Incarnate to give the group Minor Courage. At the time of making this video, my understanding was that top-tier DDs only needed 10% extra crit damage to put them at cap, which Lucent Echoes provides at nearly full uptime, at least if you remember to equip all the gear pieces. In addition, DDs right now don't typically have a self-source of Minor Courage anymore, so Magma Incarnate provides that, along with buffing them with Minor Resolve. In reality, during this run, I had on the mythic item Esoteric Environment Greaves, and not the full 5-piece of Lucent Echoes, because I used to run this tank as an experimental dungeon endgame werewolf tank. When I realized this the day after completing this, it explained why my sustain was worse than I originally anticipated, although it was still pretty manageable, and we got the job done anyway. If you are running with a healer, they'll be running a source of Major Courage, so you won't have to. That means you can swap out Olarima for War Machine, or Powerful Assault as great options, or even Pearlescent if you want a little bit more survivability if anybody in your group goes down. If you want some Monster Helm or Mythic variety, Bloodspawn is and always has been a solid option for more ultimate, so you can keep casting Colossus after Colossus, or hit your shield ultimate when needed. And of course, you can also use the Mythic Spalder of Ruin as an extra group buff as well instead, if you would prefer to do that. Let's talk about your bar setup and your flex skills. On the front bar, I don't really have any flex spots, although I could backbar one of the skills if needed. We already mentioned the Dark Cloak, Mirage, and Bound Aegis when we talked about survivability, and we already discussed the Shield Discipline ultimate to pair with those things. Mirage is the skill that can go on the back bar, as that is a very long time that skill lasts, like 22 seconds. So that can go on the back bar if you prefer. The remaining two abilities on the front bar are your Pierce Armor Taunt and your Chain. In my opinion, the absolute best chain to run is the Scribe skill, Leashing Throw. The way to set it up is so that it pulls enemies to you, bashes/interrupts, and provides off balance. This is a one-stop shop that you almost never need to take off your bar. A skill that chains in enemies is obviously a staple of tanking, whether it's just for ad pulls or for a boss fight where there are extra ads. If you need to get interrupts on an unchainable enemy, which is actually fairly common, it's very annoying to have to slot a different skill and take up one of your flex spots. So if you just make your Leashing Throw a ranged bash as well, it takes care of the problem. Then, of course, during boss fights, why not have an on-demand source of off-balance? So this skill, Leashing Throw, is great with those three things, and it can only be on the Sword and Shield bar, so it should pretty much stay there no matter what, in my opinion. The back bar is where you have more options. The only must-haves are the Colossus Ultimate, Frost Clench for your ranged taunt, maim, and brittle, and Wall of Elements to keep applying your Crusher enchant. The other three spots are content and gear dependent. I started the dungeon with Unnerving Boneyard to easily apply the Olarima buff, Mass Hysteria as a crowd control and source of major cowardice, and Trample to give me major heroism. This will also activate Powerful Assault if you are running the Powerful Assault set. Those three skills can be swapped out for several things. For example, if you need a damage shield for yourself, you can run the Daedric Summoning ability Regenerative Ward, the Contingency Scribe skill, or Bone Surge from the Undaunted line, which will also give your group a synergy and damage shield. If you need more sustain and expect there to be corpses, you can run Mystic Siphon from the Gravelord line. If your group needs a burst heal, of course you can also run Overflowing Altar as a choice, and you can even throw Energy Orb to your group for some extra healing for yourself and them, and also give them a sustain synergy. Of course, if you need more self-heals beyond your main hot on your front bar, Vigor is always a great option, and it will also trigger Powerful Assault. I actually use Vigor in the final boss fight, as it's a lot of damage in this hard mode. Finally, if you are running Mirage on the back bar instead of the front bar, you can put on Defensive Stance or Heroic Slash on your front bar to replace it if you so choose. Next, we can review CP slotables. On blue, it's usually pretty common to run Ironclad, Enduring Resolve, Duelist's Rebuff, and Unassailable. Those are all for damage mitigation. However, since you are running a very durable tank that has insane mitigation already, feel free to swap out Ironclad and Duelist's Rebuff for Focused Mending and Swift Renewal. The extra self-healing can go a long way if you need it. On red, the only thing that I think you must run is Bracing Anchor. If you aren't going for a no-death or trifecta, definitely also run Spirit Mastery, especially if you plan on going for the reses as we talked about earlier in the video. Everything else is pretty content dependent. Some options are Celerity if you need speed, Survival Instinct if you're being hit with status effects regularly, Expert Evasion or Slippery if you're getting CC'd a lot or need to roll often, Fortified if you're somehow not at resistance cap, or Boundless Vitality if you just want some extra health. Last up, let's talk about Sustain. I thought that 2-manning the Oathsworn Pit final boss on hard mode would be a major test of this tank's abilities. This fight has a lot of movement and a ton of damage over time. Without a healer, and with only one DD, I had to be able to survive by myself for a long time. To top it off, remember I had accidentally put on Esoteric Greaves, which definitely hurt my stamina. On the other hand, it may have helped my damage mitigation quite a bit, but I'm not sure what the risk to reward ratio was there. One thing this particular build lacks is good sustain skills. On a pure Sorc, you can run Dark Deal for on-demand stamina. On a pure Nightblade, you spam siphoning attacks for pretty much unlimited resources. On a pure Necromancer, you can at least run Mortal Coil. On this build, you only have access to the Gravelord skill line's Mystic Siphon, which isn't all that helpful due to the lack of corpses in the fight and also not recovering resources when you're blocking. So if the sustained skills aren't all that great, what can we do? First and foremost, on pretty much all my dungeon tanks, I run block cost reduction wherever possible. Most of my gear gets the sturdy trait. My jewelry gets infused block cost reduction as well. It's no different here. Another thing that most tanks don't do that I think is an absolute travesty is run Trifocus on the destruction staff. Seriously, just run Trifocus. If one resource is getting low, block with the other one while the other one recovers. The other thing that helps quite a bit with sustain is running an Argonian. The extra resources and healing are nice, but the extra resources you get from potions is excellent. The drawback, of course, is losing out on the extra ultimate generation a Nord provides, but the sustain trade-off can be worth it. Last, while most of sustain is knowing your team and your content, we do have one skill that can serve as your ace in the hole. That, of course, is Shield Discipline. You get free blocking for 8 seconds at the cost of 115 ultimate on this build. During that time, you can pull off multiple heavy attacks from either bar and get back a ton of resources. In this fight in particular, ultimate comes easy, as you can simply activate the ultimate buff from doing the second secret boss. That gives you a ton of wiggle room to switch between dropping Colossuses and getting back resources. There you have it, that's the Aegis Daedric Shadowlord build. Now feel free to watch me shield discipline my way to activating the Smelter while being chased around by too many bosses, and then enjoy the rest of the fight. If you liked this build, feel free to hit the follow button, give me a like, and throw a comment below.